Geneva stood quietly in the corner of the fancy dining room, just holding her water pitcher. In her simple black uniform, she was basically invisible. That's how it had been for 2 months now. Nobody really looked at the maid. Around the huge table, 20 men in expensive suits looked like they hadn't slept in days. Papers everywhere. Laptop screens glowing. Empty coffee cups scattered around. These guys were supposed to be geniuses, the best problem solvers money could buy. And boy, were they failing. Kang Jae-won stood at the head of the table, looking like a storm about to break. His perfect suit, his perfect hair, everything about him screamed power. But it was his eyes that scared people. Cold. Calculating. Currently very, very angry. 3 weeks. His fists slammed down hard. Everyone jumped. Papers flew. Water glasses rattled. Everyone flinched except Geneva. 3 weeks and 20 of you, the so-called best minds in Asia, can't solve one simple puzzle? Kang wasn't shouting. That somehow made it worse. Some skinny guy with glasses mumbled something about unprecedented encryption and needing more time. That's when Kang's face did that thing, that smile that wasn't really a smile. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a gun, placing it on the table with a thud that seemed to suck all the air from the room. Time, he said quietly, is something we've run out of. Geneva's fingers tightened around her pitcher. Something weird happened in her head, like when a word is on the tip of your tongue but you just can't grab it. Her eyes drifted to the papers without meaning to. Those symbols. Those numbers. Something in the back of her brain started to wake up. Have you ever had that moment when something just clicked? When knowledge you didn't even know you had suddenly surfaces? Well, that's about to happen to our mysterious maid, and the consequences will shock everyone, including herself. If you're into stories about hidden identities and unexpected talents, smash that subscribe button and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. Now, let's get back to that tense dining room. Geneva Cross had only existed for about 3 months. That's when her life seemed to start, on that cold riverbank outside Seoul. An old couple found her half-drowned, shoulder bleeding, no ID, no memories. Nothing. Just wet clothes and a head full of emptiness where her past should have been. The couple, Mr. and Mrs. Kim, took her in even though it was risky. I mean, who takes in a random foreigner with no papers who just washed up from a river? Kind people, that's who. Everyone deserves kindness, Mrs. Kim had said in her careful English while bandaging Geneva up. Even ghosts who wash up from the river. Geneva spent 3 weeks in their tiny apartment above their noodle shop. Her body healed fine. Her memory? Total blank. Doctors called it traumatic amnesia, fancy words for something bad happened and your brain hit the delete button. The weirdest part wasn't what she forgot, it was what her body remembered. Like how she could fold perfect little paper cranes without thinking. How she woke up at exactly 5:30 every morning without an alarm. How certain sounds, like cars backfiring or helicopters, made her drop to the floor before she even knew why. Her hands sometimes moved in ways that freaked her out. Like when she helped Mrs. Kim cook, she'd chop veggies with scary precision. Were you a chef before? Mrs. Kim had asked, eyes wide. Geneva just stared at the knife, wondering why it felt so right in her hand yet so wrong. After those first weeks, she needed a job. The agency placed her at Kang's mansion without asking too many questions, perfect for someone with no past to share. The pay was good. The work was straightforward. And nobody paid attention to the quiet black woman who kept everything clean. 2 months she'd been here now, learning how to be basically invisible. Walking through rooms like a shadow. Seeing everything while nobody saw her. She figured out pretty quick that Kang Jae-won was living 2 different lives. In public, he was this respected businessman with his name in magazines, showing up at fancy charity events, all smiles for the cameras. Behind these walls, something else entirely. Something that needed armed guards at every door. Something that made grown men shake when he walked into a room. Geneva knew better than to wonder too much. Better to stay in the background. Unseen. Safe. What Geneva didn't know was that Kong had been searching for someone. Someone everyone thought was dead. The whole mess started 3 weeks ago when Kang's father died in his sleep. The doctors said natural causes, but the staff whispered other theories. In this world, powerful people rarely died without help. Right after the funeral, Kong gathered his inner circle. Turns out his paranoid old dad had left behind an encrypted drive with all the good stuff, access to offshore accounts, property deeds, weapon stashes. Basically, the keys to $1 billion kingdom. Without those assets, Kong was vulnerable. His dad's old rivals, men who respected the father but saw the son as just a kid playing boss, were already circling like sharks. Geneva had overheard enough guard chatter to know the deadline. In just 48 hours, the 5 most powerful families would meet. If Kong couldn't prove he controlled his father's assets by then, well, things would get bloody. Not just for him, but for everyone loyal to him. Including the staff. Including her. So for 3 weeks, experts had come and gone. Each one promising results. Each one failing miserably. As Geneva moved around the dining room refilling water glasses for men too stressed to notice her, she tried to keep her eyes down. To stay invisible like she'd gotten so good at being. But something kept pulling her eyes to those papers on the table. To those patterns and symbols that had stumped 20 brilliant minds. She paused behind one of the experts, water pitcher frozen mid-pour, as her eyes caught a particular sequence. Something in her brain just shifted. Like when a key finally turns in a rusty lock. Heat spread behind her eyes. Pressure built in her head. The water pitcher shook slightly in her hand as information bubbled up from somewhere deep in her mind. Words formed on her lips before she could stop them. It's his mother. Geneva's voice cut through the room like a knife. Not loud, but clear. Certain. 20 heads whipped around at once. 20 pairs of eyes locked onto the maid with the water pitcher. You could have heard a pin drop in that dining room. The skinny guy with glasses blinked rapidly. Excuse me? The moment the words left her lips, Geneva knew she'd made a terrible mistake. But she couldn't stop now. Something had clicked in her brain, like pieces of a puzzle snapping into place. The encryption, she said. It's based on his mother's name. One of the men, older, with salt and pepper hair, let out a short laugh. The maid thinks she can solve it. That's adorable. Geneva didn't respond to him. Instead, she set the water pitcher down with hands steadier than they had any right to be. Something was happening to her, like her body was on autopilot while her mind struggled to catch up. She walked to the table. Nobody stopped her. These symbols here, she pointed to a sequence on one of the papers, they're not random. They're a phonetic representation of the Korean characters in his mother's name, but reversed. The room remained dead silent as she continued. And these numbers, they're GPS coordinates, but they've been offset using her birth date as the key. Her fingers traced over the papers with absolute certainty. The patterns repeat based on the date of her death. She grabbed a pen and started writing. The symbols transformed under her hand, revealing their secrets. You offset like this, apply the pattern here, and then. It took less than a minute. When she finished, she stepped back from the table, suddenly aware that everyone was staring at her like she'd grown a second head. Kong hadn't moved from his spot. But his expression had changed completely. The anger was gone, replaced by something much more calculating. His eyes narrowed slightly as he studied her face. "Test it," he said to no one in particular. The skinny guy with glasses jumped to his keyboard, typing frantically. His fingers flew across the keys, entering the solution Geneva had just written out. 30 seconds of silence. Then, It works," he said, voice cracking in disbelief. "The drive is unlocking." Murmurs erupted around the table. Some excited, some suspicious, all confused. How had this random maid solved in 1 minute what they couldn't crack in 3 weeks? But one man at the table wasn't just surprised. He was terrified. Park Jin-ho sat at Kang's right hand, his position as security chief marked by the gun holster visible beneath his jacket. While everyone else stared at the maid with confusion, Park's face had gone the color of chalk. His eyes were locked on Geneva with something that looked a lot like recognition. And fear. Kang noticed. He missed very little, especially when it came to his inner circle. "Everyone out," Kang ordered suddenly. "Except Mr. Park and..." He gestured toward Geneva, our surprisingly talented staff member. The room emptied quickly. Nobody wanted to be around when Kang was in this kind of mood, calm on the surface, unpredictable beneath. When the door closed behind the last expert, Kang leaned back in his chair. "Who are you really?" he asked simply. Geneva's mouth felt dry. "I don't know," she answered honestly. "You don't know?" Kang repeated her words, testing them. "I woke up on a riverbank 3 months ago with no memories. Nothing before that." She swallowed hard. "I don't know how I knew that solution. It just came to me when I saw the patterns." Kang glanced at Park, who was trying very hard to look normal and failing completely. "Interesting," Kang said. "Because 6 months ago, I was trying to recruit someone. A very special someone from the American intelligence community." He stood up and walked around the table, moving with the casual grace of a man completely comfortable with power. "They called this person the Ghost. No real name in any database. Just a code name and a reputation." He stopped a few feet from Geneva. "The best codebreaker, infiltration specialist, and strategic analyst the West had produced in decades." Geneva felt her heart beating faster. This couldn't be about her. It had to be a coincidence. 3 months ago, reports came in that the Ghost had been killed during a mission gone wrong. Betrayed by a member of her own team. Kang's eyes never left her face. The body was never found. The emptiness in Geneva's chest seemed to expand. Not knowing who you are creates a special kind of hollowness, like being a stranger in your own skin. The flickers of memory that sometimes came to her, hands moving with trained precision, faces without names, words in languages she didn't know she spoke, they were maddening puzzle pieces without a picture to guide her. "I'm just a maid," she said softly, but the words felt false even as she spoke them. "Are you?" Kang asked. Kang reached into his pocket and pulled out a small metal object. He tossed it to Geneva, who caught it reflexively. A lock. But not an ordinary one. It was a complex, multi-tumbler mechanism, the kind used in high-security facilities. "Open it," Kang said simply. Geneva stared at the lock. She had no idea how to open something like this. Except, her fingers were already moving. Without conscious thought, they manipulated the mechanism with expert precision. 30 seconds later, the lock clicked open. She dropped it like it had burned her. Kang nodded, as if confirming something to himself. He pulled out his phone, scrolled through some images, then turned the screen toward her. "Do you recognize any of these people?" Photos of men and women in various settings. Some in suits, some in casual clothes. Some clearly surveillance photos. Geneva studied each face, feeling nothing. Strangers, all of them. Until the fifth photo. The man had dark blonde hair, cut military short. Strong jaw. Cold blue eyes. And across his left eyebrow, a scar, thin but distinct. Geneva didn't know his name, but her body remembered him, every muscle tensed, her heart rate spiked, her palms instantly sweated. A wave of nausea hit her so hard she had to grip the edge of the table. "That's interesting," Kong said, watching her reaction closely. "That's Marcus Webb. He was your handler at the agency. And according to my sources, he was the one who tried to kill you." "I don't." Geneva tried to speak, but images flashed in her mind. A bridge. Cold water. The sound of a gunshot. "I don't remember him." "Your body does," Kong observed. "That's what matters." Park had remained silent throughout, but his eyes hadn't left Geneva once. He looked like a man watching a ghost, which, apparently, she was. Kong walked to a drawer, pulled out a file folder, and returned to the table. He slid it across to her. "Geneva Cross isn't your real name. Your name is classified. But the world knew you as the ghost." His voice softened slightly. "And I think someone went to extraordinary lengths to make sure you never remembered why." Geneva's hands shook as she opened the file. Inside was a life she couldn't remember living. Newspaper clippings with headlines like "Security Breach at Russian Embassy Leaves Experts Baffled" and "Nuclear Secrets Safe After Mysterious Intervention." No names. No photos. Just vague references to intelligence community sources. Mission reports, heavily redacted with black marker, mentioning operations in places she'd never been. Or at least, places she didn't remember being. Berlin. Cairo. Johannesburg. Pyongyang. Languages she'd supposedly mastered: Russian, Mandarin, Farsi, Arabic, Korean. But nothing in the file felt real to her, until she saw the photograph of herself receiving a medal. Her hair was different. Her posture was different. But those eyes, they were hers. In the photo, she stood straight-backed in a dark suit, face serious as some man whose face had been blacked out pinned something to her lapel. She looked harder. Sharper. Like she was carved from something tougher than the woman who now stared at her own image. "That was taken 3 years ago," Kong said, watching her carefully. "After you prevented an assassination at a peace conference in Geneva. Ironic that you chose that name." Geneva touched the photo with her fingertip. "I didn't choose it. The agency gave me the documents." "The ghost was legendary," Kong continued. 26 confirmed operations, all successful. Spoke 7 languages fluently. Could crack codes that stumped entire departments. The most decorated operative in modern intelligence history. He pointed to another paper. 6 months ago, a mission in Prague went wrong. Details are scarce, but my sources say the ghost was betrayed by her team. Presumed dead when her body washed away in the Vltava River. Geneva closed the file, feeling sick. How could this be her? This super spy, this elite agent? She'd spent the last 2 months scrubbing toilets and ironing shirts. Making herself invisible in the corners of rooms where important people talked. But the evidence was right in front of her. That was her face in the photo. "I don't remember any of this," she said quietly. "But you remembered how to solve that encryption," Kong pointed out. "And you opened that lock without thinking. Some things are deeper than memory." Geneva's room in the servants' wing was small but private, a perk of her position managing the household staff. Tonight, the simple space felt claustrophobic. The walls seemed to press in as she paced, the file tucked under her mattress where no one would find it. She'd asked Kong why he was telling her all this. His answer was simple, because I think I need the ghost. And I think you need your memory back. When sleep finally came, it wasn't peaceful. The dreams started like they always did, fragments, flashes, nothing making sense. But tonight was different. Tonight, the pieces began to connect. She was in a large room with padded floors. The smell of sweat and disinfectant hung in the air. Her body moved through complex fighting patterns, muscle memory guiding her through strikes, blocks, takedowns. A voice called out commands in Russian, and she responded instantly. The scene shifted. Cold metal in her hands. The balanced weight of a handgun. The focus of lining up a shot. The squeeze of the trigger. 5 shots, 5 bullseyes, center mass. A voice behind her, show off. Another shift. A room filled with computers. Lines of code scrolling past as her fingers flew over the keyboard. The satisfaction as an encrypted file opened, revealing its secrets. Someone patting her shoulder. Nobody cracks systems like you do. Then Prague. Rain falling on ancient architecture. The weight of tactical gear beneath civilian clothes. An earpiece buzzing with chatter. Ghost, you're clear to proceed. Marcus Webb's voice, cool and professional. Target is on the 3rd floor, East Wing. She moved through crowded streets, then through service entrances, security systems falling to her expertise. Not a combat mission. Information gathering only. The weapons dealer was a front. What they really wanted was his client list. She found the office. Cracked the safe. Downloaded the files onto a secure drive. Then something unexpected. Another file. Names she recognized. Operations that shouldn't exist. As she scanned the document, her blood went cold. Ghost, report. Have you secured the package? Webb again, tension in his voice now. Marcus, there's something here you need to see. These operations. Abort. Get out now. The change in his voice was immediate. Sharp. Frightened. But this shows. I said abort. Your position is compromised. But the memory fractured there. Something was wrong. Something Marcus said that didn't fit. The tone. The urgency. It wasn't concern for her safety. It was something else. The next fragment, running through dark hallways. Alarm bells. The sound of boots on marble floors. Then outside, rain soaking her as she fled across rooftops. The bridge. Marcus appearing ahead of her, gun raised. His face changed completely when he saw what she held in her hand. You weren't supposed to see that file, he said. Then the gun fired. Geneva woke with a gasp, bolting upright in bed. Sweat soaked her nightshirt as her heart hammered against her ribs. The dream, no, the memory, still vivid in her mind. She stumbled to the small bathroom, splashing cold water on her face. When she looked up at the mirror, she barely recognized herself. Her eyes had changed. The soft, uncertain look was gone. Something sharper, more focused stared back at her. The ghost was waking up. Unable to sleep, Geneva pushed her small desk to the center of the room. She had to know. Had to test what else her body remembered. Balance first. She stood on one leg, then closed her eyes. Perfectly steady. She tried more complex positions, yoga poses she didn't remember learning. Her body held them effortlessly. Reflexes next. She tossed a pen in the air, tried to catch it behind her back without looking. Grabbed it perfectly first try. Mind exercises. She stared at the page of a book for 30 seconds, then closed it. She could recall every word, every punctuation mark. Her body knew things her mind had forgotten. And now, the memories were starting to return. The next morning, a knock on her door came early. One of Kang's personal guards. The boss wants to see you. Kang's office occupied the entire top floor of the East Wing. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked Seoul's skyline. Unlike the traditional luxury of the rest of the mansion, this space was modern, minimalist. Kang sat behind a glass desk, looking like he hadn't slept either. "Did you remember anything?" he asked without preamble. Geneva hesitated, then decided on honesty. "Prague. Parts of it. I was sent to get information from a weapons dealer. But I found something else. Something I wasn't supposed to see." Kang nodded slowly. "I thought as much." He turned his laptop toward her. "I've accessed the encrypted drive. Most of it is exactly what I expected: offshore accounts, property deeds, weapon caches. The business infrastructure my father built. But there was something else on that drive. Something that made Kang's hands shake slightly as he turned the screen toward her. A file labeled, Operation Blackfire, Ghost Elimination Protocol. Geneva stared at the screen, her mouth going dry. "Your father was involved?" "It appears so," Kang said grimly. "From what I can gather, Blackfire was a joint operation between certain elements of Korean intelligence and their American counterparts. Not official. Off the books." He scrolled through the file, showing her redacted documents, code names, dates going back 5 years. "I think you discovered this operation in Prague. And when you did, they decided you needed to be eliminated." Kang's voice was calm, but his eyes burned with intensity. "My father was one of the architects of Blackfire. Whatever it was, he considered it important enough to kill 4. Geneva felt cold all over. "Why are you showing me this?" Kang closed the laptop. "Because I'm not my father. I've spent 3 years trying to transform his organization into something legitimate. Something better." He leaned forward. "I wanted to find the ghost 6 months ago to help me with that transformation. The fact that you're here now, that you solved that puzzle. I don't believe in coincidences." He stood, walking to the window. "I'm offering you a deal. Help me understand what Blackfire was. Help me dismantle whatever my father built. In return, I'll give you all the resources you need to recover your memory. And if you want revenge against the people who tried to kill you, I can help with that too." Geneva thought of the fragmented memories, of Marcus Webb's face as he pointed the gun at her. "I don't want revenge," she said quietly. "I want answers." Kang studied her face. "Then we want the same thing." He extended his hand. After a moment's hesitation, Geneva shook it. Whatever she had been before, spy, operative, ghost, she wasn't that person anymore. But she wasn't just a maid either. She was something new. Something in between. As she left Kang's office, something caught her attention. Park Jin-ho stood near the stairwell, his back turned, phone pressed to his ear. His voice was hushed, but the acoustics of the hallway carried his words clearly. "It's confirmed. She's alive." The next morning, Geneva found herself in a place she'd never been before, Kang's private library. Unlike his modern office, this room felt timeless. Walls of books, leather chairs, the smell of old paper and expensive wood polish. Kang stood by a large world map mounted on the wall, small red pins marking locations across every continent. "My father's empire," he said simply, gesturing at the pins. "Shipping routes. Properties. Business interests. Some legitimate. Most, not." Geneva studied the map. "It's extensive." "It's a cancer," Kang replied, surprising her. Built on pain. Built on blood. He moved to his desk, pressing a button that made the map slide upward, revealing a digital screen beneath. A new map appeared, fewer pins, different locations. This is my vision, he explained. Legitimate businesses. Clean money. A foundation that doesn't need to be hidden in darkness. Kang Jae-won wasn't just a crime lord. He was a man trying to escape his father's shadow, and, Geneva suspected, his father's sins. Why show me this? She asked. Kang's smile was tired. Because I need you to understand why I'm helping you. This isn't charity. He pulled up photographs of older men, hard faces, expensive suits, cold eyes. My father's inner circle. The old guard. His jaw tightened. They see my changes as weakness. They've been waiting for a chance to replace me with someone who thinks more like my father did. Geneva was starting to see Kang differently. Not just the dangerous boss who put guns on tables to make points. There was something more complex here. A man driven by something beyond power. They're the ones coming for you at that meeting, she realized. Yes. Without my father's assets, I'm vulnerable. He closed the screen. But this is bigger than just me keeping power. If they take control, thousands of people suffer. Geneva thought about it. Kang was still a criminal. Still dangerous. But perhaps his vision was the lesser evil. And right now, she needed his resources. So we help each other, she said. I help you keep your position. You help me uncover the truth about Blackfire. And about yourself, Kang added. That landed differently. Geneva felt the weight of her lost identity like a physical pressure in her chest. 3 months of emptiness. Of being nobody. She looked at Kang and saw something familiar in his eyes, the haunted look of someone defined by a past they didn't choose. Both were fighting to break free of their histories. Both seeking a different future. Tell me about Operation Blackfire, she said. Everything you know. Kang poured 2 glasses of water, handing one to her. Not much beyond what I showed you yesterday. It started roughly 5 years ago. Joint operation between certain elements in Korean and American intelligence. Not official channels, Geneva noted. Definitely not. This was off the books completely. My father provided funding, logistics, safe houses. He took a sip of water. What I can't figure out is the objective. The files are heavily encrypted, and the ones I've accessed are disturbing. How so? Lists of names. Dates. Locations. Kang's voice dropped. People who died in accidents. People who disappeared. Assassinations, Geneva said flatly. That would be my guess. But why? These weren't terrorists or criminal targets. Businessmen. A journalist. A university professor. Geneva felt a chill run down her spine. And I found out about it in Prague. And someone decided you needed to be eliminated. Kang leaned forward. I think my father was protecting this operation when he died. And I think it's still active. Geneva thought about Park on the phone. She's alive. That message had gone somewhere. To someone who thought she was dead. Someone who wanted her to stay that way. I need to remember what happened in Prague, she said. And to do that, I need to become the ghost again. The underground level of Kang's mansion had been built as a panic room. Reinforced walls. Independent ventilation. Enough supplies to last months. Now, it had been transformed into a training facility. No cameras, Kang assured her as he showed her around. No records. Only 3 people have access, you, me, and my most trusted security officer. not Park. The space had everything: exercise equipment, practice weapons, climbing walls, even computer stations for code work. I'll have whatever else you need brought in, Kong said. Geneva walked the perimeter, touching equipment, feeling weights. This will do. For the next week, she lived 2 lives. During the day, she maintained her cover as the household manager, overseeing staff, keeping the mansion running. But for hours each morning and night, she disappeared into the underground facility. Her body remembered what her mind didn't: the perfect stance, the precise movements. At first, it was frustrating. Her muscles would perform complex maneuvers that her conscious mind couldn't understand. But gradually, the disconnect began to fade. Running the obstacle course, her time improved each day. At the shooting range, using non-lethal training weapons, her accuracy was uncanny. Coding exercises that would challenge experts took her minutes. With each day, the ghost emerged a little more from beneath the maid's humble exterior. Your progress is remarkable, Kong commented one evening, watching her complete a climbing exercise in record time. Geneva wiped sweat from her brow. It's not progress. It's remembering. Kong had assigned 2 tech specialists, brothers he trusted completely, to help decrypt more of the Blackfire files. They worked in a secure room, isolated from the main network. We're getting somewhere, the older brother told Geneva, showing her decoded segments. But it's slow. Whoever encrypted these files was very, very good. Show me the encryption pattern, Geneva said. She studied it for 10 minutes, completely still. Then she began typing. The brothers watched in amazement as she bypassed security measures that had stumped them for days. How did you know to do that? The younger brother asked. Geneva stared at her hands. I think I designed it, she said quietly. Or something very similar. Each decryption success brought back more fragments of memory. Faces began to have names. Locations triggered recollections of missions. A particular code signature reminded her of training exercises with other operatives. But the critical memory, what happened on that bridge in Prague, remained frustratingly out of reach. She could remember finding the files. Remember running. Remember facing Marcus Webb. But what was in those files? What had she seen that was worth killing her over? That part remained locked away, like her mind was protecting her from something too terrible to remember. During a sparring session with one of Kang's security team, Geneva suddenly froze mid-movement. A flash of memory, a training room much like this one, but she wasn't alone. Other operatives. A team. Her team. You okay? Her sparring partner asked. Geneva shook her head. Just remembering. Later, she told Kong about it. I wasn't a solo operative. I had a team. Kong nodded. That fits with the intelligence I gathered. The ghost usually worked with a small, elite unit. 4 people total, including yourself. And one of them tried to kill me, she said grimly. Marcus Webb, Kong confirmed. Your handler, according to my sources. Geneva closed her eyes, trying to force the memory. I trusted him. 3 days before the crucial meeting of the 5 families, Geneva noticed something that set off alarm bells in her newly awakened mind. Park Jin-ho was watching her. Not openly. Not obviously. But the ghost noticed things ordinary people missed. The way he always seemed to be in corridors she used. How his eyes followed her when he thought she wasn't looking. The fact that he took his phone calls outside, away from the house. Something's not right with Park, she told Kong that evening. My father trusted him completely, Kong said. Which is precisely why I don't. Geneva decided to watch the Watcher. That night, instead of training, she tracked Park's movements through the compound. Just after midnight, he left the main house, walking to the gardens where the cell reception was better. Using skills that felt increasingly natural, Geneva moved silently through the darkness, positioning herself behind a hedge within earshot. No change in status, Park was saying. She's still here. A pause as he listened. I don't know how much she remembers. She's spending a lot of time with the boss. Another pause. Of course I understand the urgency. But I can't just. He was interrupted by whoever was on the other end of the call. The words Geneva heard next made her blood freeze. Webb wants confirmation. Send a photo, but don't engage. Park's voice lowered. I'll try to get one tomorrow. But this is dangerous. If Kong finds out. Geneva had heard enough. She slipped away before Park finished his call, mind racing. Marcus Webb knew she was alive. And he was using Park as his eyes inside the mansion. The next day, Geneva watched Park carefully while maintaining her cover. When he left for his weekly security meeting in the city, she made her move. Park's office was in the security wing. Getting in wasn't difficult. Her position as household manager gave her access to most areas. Finding what she needed might prove harder. She started with his computer. Locked, of course, but locks, digital or physical, weren't much of an obstacle anymore. Within minutes, she was scrolling through his files. There they were, communications with someone in America. The emails were coded, but she recognized certain patterns. Updates on her activities. Photographs taken secretly, Geneva walking through hallways, Geneva in the garden, Geneva talking with Kong. She found download records for the blueprints of the mansion. Security protocols. Staff schedules. Park wasn't just reporting. He was preparing for something. Geneva faced a dilemma: tell Kong or handle it herself? Telling Kong would be simpler. He had the authority and resources to deal with Park immediately. But if she was wrong, if there was some explanation she hadn't considered, it could damage the fragile trust between them. No, better to be certain. To gather more evidence. She decided to set a trap, feed false information through Park. Let him report that she was planning to leave the compound. See who showed up to intercept her. Geneva carefully replaced everything as she'd found it and moved toward the door. As she reached for the handle, a voice spoke from behind her. Find anything interesting? She turned slowly. Kong stood in the doorway, his expression revealing nothing about whether he saw her as an ally or a threat. Geneva froze. Getting caught snooping in Park's office wasn't part of the plan. The hallway was dark except for the faint security lights, casting Kang's face in shadow. He stood perfectly still, blocking the only exit. I asked if you found anything interesting, he repeated, voice unnervingly calm. Geneva's mind raced through options. Lie? Make an excuse? Try to slip past him? Each choice felt wrong. The ghost might have had protocols for situations like this, but Geneva, whoever she was now, decided on something simpler. Honesty. Park is working with Marcus Webb, she said, meeting Kang's eyes directly. He's been sending reports, photos. Updating them on my condition, my activities. She gestured toward the computer. There are blueprints of your home, security protocols, staff schedules. He's not just reporting, he's setting something up. Kong said nothing, his face unreadable in the dim light. He took a step forward, and Geneva tensed, ready to defend herself if necessary. What Geneva didn't expect was Kang's smile, not angry, but satisfied. Show me exactly what you found, he said, walking past her to the computer. Geneva blinked in confusion but did as he asked, pulling up the files she'd discovered, showing him the communications, the photos, the downloaded security information. Just as I thought, Kang said, nodding slightly. He's been more active than usual this week. You knew? Geneva asked, not bothering to hide her surprise. Kang closed the files and turned to face her. Park Jin-ho has worked for my father for 20 years. His loyalty was never to me. I've known he was reporting to someone since the day I took over. He gestured for her to follow him out of the office. What I didn't know until recently was who he was reporting to. They walked silently through the dark corridors until they reached Kang's private study. Once inside, he closed the door and turned on only a small desk lamp. I've been feeding Park controlled information for months, Kang explained. Letting him see what I want his masters to see. Why not just get rid of him? Geneva asked. Because Park leads to Webb. And Webb leads to whoever gave the order to eliminate the ghost. Kang sat on the edge of his desk. And now, thanks to you showing up, we have leverage we didn't have before. Me, Geneva said, understanding. Kang nodded. You're supposed to be dead. The fact that you're not, and that you're here, of all places, has them scared. I've been watching Park's communications spike since you solved that puzzle. He pulled out his phone, showing her surveillance photos of Park making late-night calls from the garden, the same spot she had observed him from. So what's the plan? Geneva asked. Kang's smile returned, a predator's smile. We use Park to set a trap for Webb. Give him exactly what he wants, a chance to finish what he started in Prague. Hold on, the ghost is awakening, but her enemies are closing in faster than she realizes. I don't want you to miss a single moment of what happens next, so make sure you smash that subscribe button and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. Now, let's get back to see what kind of trap Geneva and Kang are planning. The next morning, Geneva and Kang met in the underground training facility to plan their strategy. We need to draw Webb out, Kang explained, spreading a map of Seoul across a table. Make him think he has a clean shot at you. Geneva studied the map, muscle memory from countless operations kicking in. We'll need a believable scenario. Something that forces him to act personally rather than send a team. They decided on a simple but effective plan, leak information through Park that Geneva was starting to remember Prague. That she'd hidden evidence somewhere in the city. That she planned to retrieve it alone. Webb will have to come himself, Geneva said. If there's evidence that could expose Operation Blackfire, he can't risk anyone else handling it. And when he shows up, we'll be waiting, Kang finished. As they worked through the details, Geneva found herself impressed by Kang's strategic mind. He thought several steps ahead, considered multiple contingencies, adapted quickly to new information. In another life, he would have made an excellent intelligence officer. There was something comforting about working with someone who understood the stakes. They were both outsiders in their own worlds, Kang fighting against his father's legacy, Geneva piecing together an identity from fragments of memory. Both walking a dangerous line between who they were and who they wanted to be. The trust building between them surprised her. She'd woken up on that riverbank alone, no memories, no connections. For months, she'd been completely isolated in her emptiness. Now, planning this operation with Kang, she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time, understood. But there was something Kang wasn't telling her, something in his eyes whenever Prague was mentioned. A shadow. A hesitation. As if he knew something about that night that he wasn't sharing. What happens after we get Webb? Geneva asked, testing him. We find out everything he knows about Blackfire, Kang said smoothly. Then we dismantle it. And the 5 families? Your meeting is tomorrow night. Kang's jaw tightened slightly. One problem at a time. With my father's assets secured, I can handle them. Throughout the day, they worked with Kang's tech team to decrypt more of the Blackfire files. Each new piece of information painted a darker picture. The operation had begun 5 years ago. Joint venture between rogue elements in Korean and American intelligence agencies. Kang's father had provided funding, safe houses, and political protection on the Korean side. The purpose? Targeted elimination of individuals deemed destabilizing to international interests. But as Geneva read through the case files of these destabilizing targets, a disturbing pattern emerged. A journalist investigating defense contracts. A professor researching campaign finance laws. A tech entrepreneur developing encryption technology that would challenge government surveillance capabilities. These weren't terrorists or violent criminals. These were people who threatened power structures. People asking dangerous questions. This is what I found in Prague, Geneva said quietly. Not just the operation, but the targets. The truth about who they were killing. Kang handed her another decrypted file. There's more. The file contained a list of names, targets eliminated under Blackfire. 23 names, 23 accidents or suicides that had been carefully engineered. But it was the last entry that made Geneva's blood run cold. The final name on the list was blank, with only a date, 6 months from now. Someone important, she murmured. Someone they're still planning to eliminate. Kang looked at her, his expression grave. Someone worth killing the ghost to protect. While Geneva and Kang plotted in Seoul, a plane landed at Incheon Airport. A man with a scar across his left eyebrow passed through customs using a diplomatic passport. No questions asked. No luggage scanned. Marcus Webb looked nothing like the dangerous operative he was. Average height. Forgettable face except for the scar. The kind of person your eyes would skip over in a crowd. Perfect for his line of work. He took a taxi directly to a small hotel near the business district. Not luxury, but not suspicious either. Just another American businessman in Seoul. In his room, he made a call. I've arrived. Is everything arranged? 2 hours later, Park Jin-ho sat across from him in the hotel restaurant, looking nervous despite the casual setting. She doesn't suspect anything, Park reported, sliding a manila envelope across the table. But she's spending a lot of time with Kang. Private meetings. Areas of the house I can't access. Webb opened the envelope, examining the photographs inside. Geneva walking through gardens. Geneva talking with staff. Geneva entering Kang's private study. What has she remembered? Webb asked, keeping his voice conversational. I'm not sure. But yesterday, she was asking questions about Prague. Specific questions. Webb's hand paused over his coffee cup. What kind of questions? About the bridge. About what she might have found there. Park lowered his voice. She told one of the maids she hid something in the city before she lost her memory. That she's going to retrieve it tomorrow. Alone? Yes. Kang is meeting with the 5 families. She'll slip out during the confusion. Webb nodded slowly, processing the information. You've done well, Park. He reached into his jacket, pulled out a small envelope. The first payment. The rest when the job is finished. You promised extraction for me as well, Park reminded him. When this is over, Kang will know I betrayed him. It's arranged. My team is already in position, 4 operatives, the best available. Webb's tone was reassuring, professional. Cleanup crews standing by. We'll handle everything. After Park left, Webb sat alone, staring at the photographs. His face betrayed nothing, but inside, a genuine fear was growing. He remembered Prague vividly. The rain. The cold. The shock on her face when he raised his gun. You weren't supposed to see that file, he had told her. In their years working together, He'd never seen the ghost afraid, until that moment on the bridge. What she'd found wasn't just evidence of an illegal operation. It was something worse. Something that had made even the ghost, the most controlled operative he'd ever known, look horrified. He'd aimed for her heart. A quick, clean kill for someone who deserved better. But she'd moved at the last second. The shot hit her shoulder. She'd fallen from the bridge into the icy water below. No body was ever recovered. He'd convinced himself she was dead, had to be dead. Until Park's message arrived, she's alive. Webb looked at a photograph of Geneva with Kong, studying it carefully. They stood in the garden, talking intently. Too comfortable with each other. Too familiar. She doesn't remember everything, Webb murmured to himself. If she did, she wouldn't be anywhere near him. He picked up his phone to make a call to his superiors, the ones who had given the order to eliminate the ghost in the first place. The ones who oversaw Blackfire from the shadows. It's worse than we thought, Webb said when the call connected. She's with the sun. The secure room in the East Wing had become their command center. 3 computer stations. Walls covered with notes and photos. The pieces of Operation Blackfire scattered around them like a giant puzzle. Geneva sat at the main terminal, fingers moving across the keyboard with practiced ease. Beside her, Kong studied a separate set of files, occasionally making notes. I think I found something, she said, pointing to a sequence of code. This encryption has a backdoor. Someone built a way in that wasn't meant to be found. Kong leaned closer. Can you use it? Geneva nodded, already typing. Give me a few minutes. The code was breaking piece by piece, but so was the wall in Geneva's mind. Each new file, each new name or location seemed to chip away at the barrier blocking her memories. The screen filled with newly decrypted folders. Geneva clicked through them methodically until she opened one containing surveillance photos. She froze, her finger hovering over the trackpad. What is it? Kong asked. This place. Geneva stared at the image of an ornate building with a distinctive red roof. I've been here. The photo had been taken in Prague. As she looked at it, something cracked open inside her mind. Not fragments this time, a flood. She remembered everything about that night. The cold air that made her breath visible in little clouds. The weight of her equipment against her body, the earpiece, the lock picks, the small calibrated tools of her trade. Marcus's voice in her ear, calm and professional as always. Building security makes rounds every 12 minutes. You have a window at the east entrance. She remembered the feel of the cobblestones beneath her boots. The smell of the river nearby. The slight tremble in her hands that wasn't from the cold, but from adrenaline. The mission briefing had been clear: infiltrate the office of a suspected weapons dealer, retrieve client information that might lead to terrorist cells. Standard intelligence gathering. But that wasn't why she was really there. Geneva? Kang's voice sounded distant. She blinked, coming back to the present. I wasn't there for the weapons dealer, she said quietly. That was the cover story. I was there to find evidence. Evidence of what? That Operation Blackfire had gone beyond its mandate. That they weren't just targeting legitimate threats anymore. She looked up at him, the horror of that night fresh in her mind. My own agency had become what we were supposed to fight against. Geneva stood up, needing to move as the memories crashed through her mind. I had suspected something was wrong for months, she explained, pacing the room. Operations that didn't make sense. Targets that didn't fit any threat profile. Money flowing through channels it shouldn't. She remembered entering the building through a service entrance, disabling security cameras with practiced efficiency. Finding the office. Cracking the safe. The weapons dealer was connected to Blackfire. He wasn't just selling guns, he was providing specialized equipment for their operations. Untraceable weapons. Custom tools. She had downloaded his client files as instructed, but then looked deeper. Hidden folders. Encrypted communications. And there it was, proof of what she'd suspected. Names of people assassinated by Blackfire operatives. Wire transfers from shell companies. Detailed plans for operations that had been disguised as accidents or terrorist attacks. Her voice hardened. People who had done nothing wrong except ask questions about the wrong things or look too closely at the wrong people. Geneva remembered feeling sick as she downloaded the files. This wasn't intelligence work, this was murder for hire, political assassination dressed up as national security. I was almost finished when Marcus realized what I was doing. She stopped pacing, the memory crystal clear now. He was monitoring the download remotely. He could see what files I was accessing. She could still hear his voice changing, the professional calm giving way to something else. Panic. Fear. Abort mission now, Ghost. You're compromised. But she hadn't been compromised by the target. She'd been compromised by her own handler. I ran. Through back corridors, up to the roof, across to adjacent buildings. I've never moved so fast. She swallowed hard. But Marcus knew me. Knew how I thought, how I moved. He cut me off at the Sechev Bridge. The confrontation played out in her mind like a film. Marcus appearing ahead of her, gun already drawn. The look on his face, not anger, but resignation. You weren't supposed to see that. No one was. She remembered trying to reason with him. Telling him they could expose Blackfire together, end it. His response, it goes too high up. We'd never survive. The gunshot. The impact. The cold water of the Vltava River closing over her head. But there was something else, something about Kong. Something about his father. She turned to face him. In those files I found in Prague, there was information about the Korean side of the operation. Your father wasn't just providing resources, he was selecting targets. Geneva watched Kang's face carefully. Your father was part of it. He helped create Blackfire. She expected denial. Anger. Instead, Kang nodded slowly. Yes, he said simply. I suspected as much for years. And that's why I needed you. To help me end what he started. Kang moved to a locked cabinet, opened it with a key he kept on a chain around his neck. He removed a thin file folder. 3 years ago, I found evidence that my father was involved in something beyond his usual operations. Money disappearing into accounts I couldn't trace. Meetings with people who shouldn't have been in the same room together. He placed the folder on the table. I started investigating quietly. He opened the folder, revealing photos. Kang's father meeting with American officials. Names. Dates. Locations. 6 months ago, I learned about the Ghost, an operative who might have information about a joint Korean-American operation. I tried to make contact. His expression darkened. Then I heard the Ghost had been killed in Prague. You were looking for me before I ended up here, Geneva realized. I was looking for anyone who could help me understand what my father had built. And dismantle it. Kang closed the folder. When you solved that encryption puzzle, I knew exactly who you were. The coincidence was impossible. Not coincidence, Geneva said slowly, thinking it through. I was found in the Han River. Prague is thousands of miles away. Kang nodded grimly. Someone brought you to Korea. Someone who knew who you were. But why here? Why your house? That, Kang said, is what we need to find out. With most of her memories restored, Geneva worked with Kang to finalize their plan for trapping Webb. The meeting of the 5 families was scheduled for tomorrow night, the perfect distraction. Park has been told that you're planning to retrieve hidden evidence from a storage locker in the city, Kang explained, pointing to a map. He believes I'll be occupied with a meeting, leaving you free to move. Geneva studied the location they'd chosen for the trap. Webb will be suspicious. He knows I'm good. Which is why the information needs to be believable. We're not just feeding him the location, we're giving him a reason why you'd go there alone. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. Let Webb think that Geneva still didn't fully trust Kang. That she was playing both sides, retrieving evidence to protect herself in case Kang turned on her. Park had been carefully fed this narrative over the past day, Geneva asking suspicious questions about Kang's motives, making secretive phone calls, appearing nervous. Webb will believe it because it's exactly what he would expect the ghost to do, Geneva said. Have a backup plan. An insurance policy. What they didn't know was that Webb had already set his own trap. While Geneva and Kang prepared their ambush, Webb's team of 4 operatives had already infiltrated the outer perimeter of the compound. Disguised as maintenance workers for the electrical systems, they had spent the day placing small devices at key junction points. Inside the secure room, Geneva paused suddenly while reviewing the security feeds. Something felt wrong. She developed instincts over years of operations, little warnings that registered below conscious thought. These security patrol patterns, she said, pointing to the monitors showing guards walking their routes. They've changed. Kang looked closer. They're the same as always. No. They're passing certain areas faster. Avoiding the east perimeter cameras. She pulled up footage from earlier that day. There, that maintenance van. Your regular service company uses trucks with the logo on both sides. This one only has it on the driver's side. Kang immediately got on his secure line to the head of security. The response came back quickly. No maintenance had been scheduled for today. He's not waiting for tomorrow, Geneva realized. Webb won't come in himself, he's sending others first. To make sure it's safe. They scrambled to alter their plans, calling in Kang's most trusted security personnel, securing the central areas of the compound. But they were already behind. As night fell, Geneva was explaining the new defense strategy to Kang when the lights flickered once, twice, then went out completely. The entire compound plunged into darkness. Emergency systems should have activated immediately. They didn't. In the pitch black of the secure room, Geneva's voice was calm but urgent. They're already here. The darkness was absolute. For 3 heartbeats, neither Geneva nor Kang moved. Then, as if a switch flipped inside her mind, the ghost took over. Stay behind me, she whispered, already moving toward the door. They'll have night vision. We don't. She grabbed Kang's arm, guiding him to a corner of the secure room. Her other hand found a heavy paperweight from the desk. How many? Kang asked, his voice barely audible. At least 4. Maybe more. Geneva's mind was calculating rapidly. They'll secure the main entry points first, then sweep inward. As if on cue, they heard it, the faint click of the door at the end of the hallway. Soft footsteps. The subtle electronic hum of night vision goggles. You have a gun, she whispered. In my desk. Left drawer. Too late for that. Geneva squeezed his arm once. When I move, stay put unless I tell you otherwise. She slipped away from him, becoming one with the darkness. Years of training had prepared her for exactly this, operating blind when others could see. It wasn't about matching their advantage, it was about using their disadvantage against them. Night vision had limits. Peripheral vision was poor. Depth perception, compromised. And if you relied on it completely, you became vulnerable to what you couldn't see. The footsteps grew closer. 2 sets. Moving with the confidence of predators who thought their prey was blind. Geneva pressed herself against the wall beside the door, paperweight gripped tightly. She controlled her breathing, slow, silent. Waited. The door eased open. A figure in tactical gear entered, weapon raised, scanning the room through the green glow of night vision goggles. Geneva didn't hesitate. She struck the back of his knee hard, collapsing his leg, then smashed the paperweight against his goggles as he fell. The plastic shattered with a crack. Before he could shout, her hand clamped over his mouth, other arm locking around his neck in a precise choke hold, just enough pressure to render him unconscious, not enough to kill. The second operative reacted instantly, swinging his weapon toward the sounds of struggle. But in the cramped doorway, with his partner down, his shot went wide. That's when Kong moved. Despite Geneva's instructions to stay put, he launched himself low across the floor, tackling the second man at the knees. Both crashed to the ground, the operative's weapon skittering across the floor. Not bad, Geneva muttered, already securing the first operative with his own zip ties. I had good teachers, Kong replied, dodging a punch from his opponent. Geneva moved to assist, efficiently subduing the second man with a precise strike to a nerve cluster. There'll be more, she said, retrieving both weapons. She handed one to Kong. Non-lethal if possible. Kong checked the weapon, clearly familiar with its operation. My father made sure I could protect myself. What surprised her wasn't her own abilities, it was how naturally she and Kong worked together. No wasted movements. No confusion. Like they'd trained together for years instead of days. They moved into the dark hallway, Geneva leading, senses hyperalert to every sound, every shift in the air currents. We need to get to the security center, Kong whispered. If we can restore power. They'll have someone there already, Geneva replied. We need another approach. From the floor below came the sound of breaking glass, followed by shouted commands. More of Webb's team breaching the west wing. How many people did he send? Kong asked. Enough to make sure I don't leave here alive. They made their way through the mansion by feel and memory, avoiding the main corridors where Webb's team would concentrate their search. Geneva's hand never left Kang's arm, guiding him through the darkness she couldn't see but somehow navigated perfectly. 2 more of Webb's operatives appeared at the end of a hallway, the green glow of their goggles visible even at a distance. Wait here, Geneva whispered, pressing Kong against the wall. Before he could protest, she'd vanished into the darkness. Kong heard nothing, not a footstep, not a breath, until the sudden sounds of a brief struggle, followed by 2 soft thuds. Clear, her voice called softly. They continued this way through the mansion, Geneva moving like a shadow, neutralizing Webb's team one by one, always non-lethal, always precise. With each encounter, something shifted in her expression, a struggle playing out behind her eyes. You don't have to keep them alive, Kong said after the 5th takedown. These people came to kill us. Geneva secured the unconscious operative with his own restraints. I'm not that person anymore, she said simply. I don't want to be. The emotional weight of her words hung between them. The ghost had been a weapon, efficient, lethal when necessary, following orders without question. But the woman who emerged from that river 3 months ago was fighting to be something else. Someone else. They reached the main security center 30 minutes later. The room was dark except for the glow of a single laptop screen, illuminating the face of Park Jin-ho as his fingers moved frantically across the keyboard. Deleting evidence? Kong asked from the doorway, his voice making Park jump. Park's hand moved toward his waistband, but Geneva was already across the room, twisting his arm behind his back and forcing him against the desk. "Don't," she said quietly. Park's eyes darted between them, a cornered animal calculating his chances. "It's over, Park," Kong said, moving to the laptop. The screen showed file directories being wiped, security logs being erased. "You can't hide what you've done." "What I've done?" Park laughed bitterly. "I followed orders. The same as always." "My orders?" "No." Park's face hardened. "Your father's orders. I was his man. I was always his man, never yours." Kong nodded slowly, as if this confirmed something he'd long suspected. Even after his death. Especially after his death. Park winced as Geneva secured his hands. "He knew what you planned to do with his empire. The changes you wanted to make. He couldn't allow it. So he what? Arranged to have his own son eliminated?" Kang's voice remained calm, but Geneva could see the pain beneath his composure. But Park's next words changed everything. "Webb isn't just here for her. He's here for the final name on the list." Geneva felt her blood turn cold. The blank name on the Blackfire target list, with only a date 6 months in the future. "It's you," she said to Kong. "You're the final target." Park nodded. "Your father knew you'd never continue his work. That you'd try to dismantle everything he built. So he made arrangements before his death." "My own father," Kong said softly, the betrayal playing on his face. "He respected you," Park offered, almost sympathetically. "That's why he arranged for it to happen later, to give you time to change your mind. But when the ghost showed up here..." He shrugged. "Plans had to accelerate." "How did she end up here?" Kong demanded. "Of all places?" Before Park could answer, a new voice spoke from the doorway. "That was my doing, actually." Marcus Webb stood framed in the entrance, his silhouette outlined against the darkness of the hallway beyond. The weapon in his hand was pointed steadily at Kang's chest. Geneva moved instinctively, positioning herself at an angle that would let her intercept if Webb fired. "Hello, Ghost," Webb said, his voice oddly gentle. "You're looking well for someone who's supposed to be dead." In the dim light from the laptop screen, Geneva could see him clearly, the scar across his left eyebrow, the cold calculation in his eyes, the slight tremor in his hand when he looked at her. Not fear, she realized. Regret. "Why did you bring me to Korea?" she asked, buying time, assessing options. "Insurance," Webb replied simply. "I couldn't be sure you were dead. The river was dragged, but no body. So I had you brought here, to the one place you'd eventually lead us to if you survived. To the son of the man who created Blackfire." "You've been busy," Webb said, gesturing with his free hand to the unconscious operatives they'd left in their wake. "Non-lethal takedowns. That's new for you." "People change," Geneva replied, eyes never leaving his weapon. "Do they?" Webb sounded genuinely curious. "I wonder." With his free hand, he tossed a small device onto the desk. It projected a holographic display, files, photographs, names. "Operation Blackfire," he explained. "In its entirety. Everything you found in Prague and more." The files scrolled past, evidence of a massive clandestine operation spanning 5 years, dozens of countries, and countless operatives. Target profiles. Asset acquisitions. Political maneuvers that had reshaped governments. It was created to eliminate anyone who threatened certain political and business interests, Webb continued. A partnership between power brokers who wanted to remain in the shadows while controlling what happened in the light. "And you were part of it," Geneva said. "We all were." Webb's eyes met hers directly. The ghost wasn't supposed to be eliminated. She was Blackfire's best operative, until Prague. Geneva felt the floor shift beneath her. No. I never. You did. Webb's voice was gentle but firm. Those missions in Berlin? In Cairo? In Johannesburg? All Blackfire operations. You were the perfect asset, brilliant, efficient, and completely committed to what you thought was the greater good. Geneva's mind raced through her recovered memories, seeing them in a new, horrifying light. The targets she'd helped eliminate. The information she'd gathered that had led to accidents and suicides. That's not possible, she whispered. I would have known. Would you? We were very careful about how missions were framed. National security. Terrorist threats. You never questioned it because you trusted the system. Trusted me. Why are you telling me this? She demanded. Because you deserve to know what you were part of before I finished this. We were keeping the world stable, Webb continued, his voice taking on a lecturer's tone. Removing destabilizing elements. You were killing people who threatened your power, Geneva shot back. Webb shrugged. Two sides of the same coin. He turned his attention to Kong. Your father was one of the architects of Blackfire. Provided funding, logistics, protection on this side of the world. A true believer in what we were doing. Until he discovered I planned to dismantle his organization, Kong said. Webb nodded. He ordered your death himself. Scheduled it for 6 months after his own. I think he couldn't bear to witness it. A father's love, twisted as it was. He checked his watch. Your father died thinking you were next. But he never knew you'd find the ghost. That's the irony here. The very operative who helped build Blackfire ended up being the one who could destroy it. Webb adjusted his stance, raising his weapon more firmly. Nothing personal, he said to Kong. Just completing the contract. But Geneva stepped between them, eyes locked on Webb. You'll have to go through me first. Again. For several heartbeats, no one moved. Webb stood in the doorway, gun pointed steadily at Geneva, who had positioned herself in front of Kong. Park remained seated, hands secured but eyes darting between them like a cornered animal seeking escape. The only light came from the laptop screen, casting everyone's faces in an eerie blue glow that made the moment feel frozen in time. Webb's finger tightened on the trigger, but his eyes betrayed him, uncertainty, maybe even fear. Not of Geneva, but of what she represented. A loose end. A mistake. Evidence that the perfect operative had failed. You don't want to do this, Geneva said quietly. If you did, you would have shot already. Webb's jaw tightened. Step aside, ghost. This isn't about you anymore. It's always been about me. From the moment you put a bullet in me and left me to drown. Webb's weapon didn't waver, but his voice did. We were a team. The best team. I trained you, shaped you. And you betrayed everything we built. By discovering the truth. By not understanding the necessity. For the first time, emotion cracked through Webb's professional demeanor. You were one of us. The best of us. Geneva's voice was steel. I was never one of you. I just didn't know it yet. The words rang through the room, and as she spoke them, Geneva felt their truth resonate within her. She had spent months wondering who she really was, the ghost? The maid? Now she realized the answer was neither. She was something new, forged from the broken pieces of who she had been. Webb's expression softened fractionally. You don't even know your own name, do you? Your real name? Geneva remained silent, waiting. Elise Winters, Webb said quietly. You were born in Chicago. Your parents were professors, linguistics and computer science. They died in a car accident when you were 16. You were recruited directly from MIT at 22. Each word hit Geneva like a physical blow. Elise. The name stirred something deep inside her, a sense of rightness, of connection to a past she'd forgotten. You had a life before the ghost, Webb continued. Friends. Hobbies. You played the piano. You ran marathons. You had a cat named Pixel that you loved more than most people. Geneva, Elise, felt tears threatening. Not just from the recovered memories, but from the realization of how much had been taken from her. Not just by the bullet and the river, but by years of being molded into someone else's weapon. Why are you telling me this now? She asked, voice steady despite the emotion churning inside her. Webb looked genuinely sad. Because one of us isn't leaving this room alive. And you deserve to die knowing who you really are. For a moment, Geneva existed in two worlds, the operative and the woman she had been before. Elise who played piano. The ghost who eliminated targets. The maid who served water to powerful men. Which one would make the next choice? The moment stretched, taut with possibility. Then Park made his move. Despite his secured hands, he lunged sideways, ramming his shoulder into the desk drawer. It sprang open, revealing a hidden compartment. His bound hands awkwardly grabbed for the small pistol inside. Geneva reacted instantly, moving to intercept, but Webb was closer. His weapon swung toward Park. Three things happened almost simultaneously. Park fired wildly, the bullet going wide. Webb fired at Park but hit the laptop instead, sending sparks and glass flying. Kong shoved Geneva aside and charged Webb directly. Chaos erupted in the small room. Webb's second shot caught Kong in the shoulder, spinning him backward. Geneva used the distraction to launch herself at Webb, her body moving with all the precision her mind had forgotten. A precise strike to his wrist sent his weapon clattering across the floor. A sweep of her leg knocked him off balance. Park, seeing his chance, bolted from the chair and out the door, still partially restrained but moving with desperate speed. Webb recovered quickly, countering Geneva's next strike with practiced skill. They exchanged a flurry of blows, two elite operatives perfectly matched, each anticipating the other's movements from years of training together. You can't beat me, Webb grunted, blocking a strike. I taught you everything you know. Not everything, Geneva replied, using a technique she'd somehow learned after their time together. The unexpected move caught Webb off guard, sending him crashing into the wall. She could have finished him then, a precise strike to the throat, a snap of the neck. The ghost would have done it without hesitation. Instead, she secured him with his own belt, tight enough to hold but not to injure. A groan from across the room pulled her attention away. Kong was slumped against the wall, blood seeping through his fingers where they clutched his shoulder. Geneva faced a choice: pursue Park, who was escaping with who knew what secrets, or stay with the injured Kong. The ghost would have followed the mission, pursued the fleeing target, secured the intelligence. But she wasn't just the ghost anymore. She knelt beside Kong, gently moving his hand to examine the wound. Bullet went through clean. You'll be okay, but we need to stop the bleeding. Park's getting away, Kong said through gritted teeth. Let him. She tore a strip from her shirt, creating a makeshift pressure bandage. You're more important. The words surprised her as she said them. But they were true. This choice, to help rather than hunt, felt like the first real decision she'd made since waking up on that riverbank. He has a secondary drive. Webb's voice broke the silence as Geneva finished bandaging Kang's shoulder. She turned to look at her former handler, still secured against the wall. Park, Webb continued. He has a backup of everything. Every Blackfire operation. Every name. If he gets that to his contacts. Why should I care? Geneva asked coldly. Blackfire deserves to be exposed. Not like this. That drive doesn't just implicate the guilty. It contains the names of every operative, every asset, including people who had no idea what they were really part of. People like you were. Kong struggled to his feet, wincing. He's right. Uncontrolled exposure would hurt innocent people. And Park isn't planning to go to authorities. He's delivering it to the highest bidder. Geneva looked between them. Why should I trust you? She asked Webb directly. Webb's answer was simple. You shouldn't. But right now, we need each other. What Webb didn't say was that he needed something else from Park, something that could change everything. His eyes darted to the shattered laptop, then back to Geneva, a calculation clearly happening behind them. Fine, Geneva said, helping Kong stand more securely. But this doesn't change anything between us. She retrieved Webb's weapon, then released his restraints. You walk in front. Try anything, and I won't hesitate this time. The unlikely trio moved through the darkened mansion, following the path Park would have taken toward the garage. The power was still out, but emergency lights had finally activated in some corridors, casting long shadows as they moved. The guards? Kong asked. My team was instructed to neutralize security, not kill, Webb answered. Unless they met resistance. They reached the garage to find the door open, the sound of an engine still echoing in the night. They were too late. He took my Audi, Kong said, looking at the empty parking space. He'll be heading for the city. We can track it, Webb offered. All his vehicles have GPS, right? Before Kong could answer, Webb's phone buzzed. He glanced at Geneva, who nodded permission for him to answer, gun still trained on him. Webb, he answered sharply. Then his face changed, color draining away as he listened. When? He asked, voice suddenly tense. How many? When he lowered the phone, his expression had transformed completely. They've activated the rest of Blackfire, he said, looking directly at Geneva. Every operative, every asset. They know you're alive, and they're coming for all of us. They regrouped in Kang's garage, the tension between them thick enough to cut. Geneva kept Webb in her peripheral vision, weapon ready. Kong sat on a workbench, pressing a fresh bandage to his shoulder wound. The power had finally returned, emergency generators humming somewhere in the distance. We have 30 minutes, maybe less, Webb said, checking his watch. Once Blackfire realizes I'm compromised, they'll send a cleaner team. Cleaner team? Kong asked. Not like the squad you just faced, Webb explained. These are the people they send when they need to erase everything. No witnesses, no evidence, no questions. Geneva studied her former handler's face. The fear there was real, but there was something else, resignation. The look of a man who'd always known this day might come. 3 enemies, forced together by a greater threat. It wasn't trust, it was survival. Tell me about this containment protocol, Geneva demanded. Webb ran a hand over his face. Blackfire has contingencies for exposure. If the operation is compromised, everyone connected becomes a liability. He met her eyes directly. Everyone. Including me. Why would they target you? Kong asked, wincing as he adjusted his position. You're one of them. Webb laughed without humor. I was useful. Now I'm a loose end. That's how this works. He turned to Geneva. You should understand that better than anyone. Geneva processed this information, mind working through scenarios with the efficiency that had once made her legendary. Options? We have 3, Webb replied. 1. Run. Separate directions, new identities, spend our lives looking over our shoulders. Pass, Kong said immediately. 2. fight. But we'd be outnumbered, outgunned, and they won't stop coming. Geneva knew he was right. The ghost had been the tip of the spear, not the whole weapon. Blackfire had resources she could only imagine. And 3, she asked. Webb met her eyes. We end Blackfire. Permanently. How? Kong demanded. You just said they have unlimited resources. They do, Webb agreed. But they also have a critical weakness, secrecy. Blackfire exists in shadows. Exposure to light kills it. Geneva considered their options. She could run again. Disappear. She'd done it before, waking up on that riverbank with no name, no past, no identity. The thought of returning to that emptiness made her physically ill. Or she could fight. Not just against the operatives coming for them, but against the entire system that had turned her into a weapon, used her, then tried to discard her. The choice crystallized with surprising clarity. I'm not running, she said firmly. Not anymore. Kong nodded, his expression grim but determined. My father helped build this thing. I'm going to help tear it down. They both looked at Webb, who hesitated only briefly before nodding. I'm already dead to them. Might as well make it count for something. Geneva set her weapon down on the workbench, not surrendering it, just signaling a shift in their dynamic. I'm not the ghost anymore, she said quietly. But I'm not just going to disappear. The woman who had been Geneva Cross, who had been Elise Winters before that, and the ghost in between, stood a little straighter, her expression hardening with resolve. Blackfire tried to kill me, erase me, use me. Now they get to see what that feels like. This ending is going to change everything you thought you knew about her and Kong. If you've made it this far, you're clearly someone who appreciates stories with depth and unexpected twists. Smash that subscribe button right now and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I promise, what happens next will be worth every second. They moved quickly, gathering supplies, weapons, and most importantly, information. Webb accessed secure servers through backdoor channels he'd created years ago. Kong provided vehicles, safe houses, and contacts through his network. Geneva pieced together the fragments of Blackfire operations from her recovered memories. Park is heading to Incheon, Webb announced, tracking the stolen Audi's GPS. He has a 9 a.m. flight to Hong Kong. He won't make it that far, Kong said. Not with what he's carrying. Geneva studied the city map, planning intercept routes. The solution isn't violence, she said suddenly, looking up at the two men. It's the one thing the ghost had always been best at, information. Webb raised an eyebrow. Explain. Blackfire operates through secrecy and fear. If we eliminate Park, we're playing by their rules. She tapped the map. But if we use what Park has, combined with what we already know, we can expose everything. To who? Kong asked. The authorities? The media? How do we know they're not compromised too? We don't, Geneva admitted. But Blackfire can't control everyone. We distribute the information widely enough, and someone will act on it. Their plan came together quickly. Webb would use his remaining Blackfire access to identify trustworthy recipients for the evidence. Kong would leverage his legitimate business contacts to amplify the exposure through financial and legal channels. Geneva would handle Park. They intercepted him at a small hotel near the airport. Not with violence, but with something more effective, the truth. They've abandoned you, Geneva told him, sliding into the seat across from him at the hotel bar. She'd approached so silently that he jumped, sloshing his drink. His hand moved toward his jacket, but she shook her head slightly. Don't. You're surrounded. Park's eyes darted around the room, spotting Webb near the entrance, Kong at a corner table. How did you find you? The same way Blackfire will. The difference is, we're not here to kill you. Geneva pushed a tablet across the table, showing him a real-time intelligence feed that Webb had accessed. Park's name had been added to a termination list, Priority 1. They know you have the backup drive, she continued. To them, you're just another loose end now. She watched the realization dawn on his face, the sudden understanding that the organization he'd served so faithfully had discarded him just as easily as they'd tried to discard her. What do you want? He asked, voice hoarse. The drive. Your testimony. Everything you know about Blackfire operations. Park laughed bitterly. And in exchange, I suppose you offer protection? Against them? Yes, Geneva said simply. Plus immunity arrangements through Kang's contacts. Why should I trust you? Any of you? Park's eyes narrowed. You tried to kill me just hours ago. No, Geneva corrected. If I'd wanted to kill you, you'd be dead. She leaned forward. I'm not the ghost anymore. I'm not following those rules. Neither should you. Park stared at her for a long moment, then reached slowly into his jacket, producing a small metallic drive. This is everything, he said quietly. Every operation. Every name. If they know I gave this to you. They already think you did, Geneva replied. Your only chance now is with us. The evidence they compiled was comprehensive. Names, dates, operations spanning 5 years across 3 continents. Financial transactions linking officials to assassinations disguised as accidents. Training protocols for turning operatives like the Ghost into perfect weapons. As Geneva organized the information, she felt a strange sense of completion. The skills that had once made her an elite agent, her precision, her attention to detail, her strategic thinking, were now being used not to eliminate targets, but to expose truth. She was using the Ghost to destroy what the Ghost had helped build. Dawn broke over Seoul as their plan went into motion. Geneva used her Ghost skills one last time, not to kill, but to ensure the evidence reached the right people simultaneously. Judges. Journalists. Intelligence oversight committees. Military leaders untainted by Blackfire connections. Some ghosts disappear. Others haunt those who deserve it. Within hours, the first reports began to surface. Carefully worded news bulletins about ongoing investigations into unnamed intelligence operations. High-level officials suddenly taking personal leave. Emergency meetings behind closed doors. It's working, Webb said, watching the news feeds in the safe house they'd established. His expression was complex, part relief, part grief for the life he was leaving behind. Geneva observed him carefully. What will you do now? Webb had his own choice to make, flee with a new identity, or stay and testify. His decision would reveal his true character, redemption or self-preservation. I built parts of this system, he said after a long pause. I should help dismantle it. He wouldn't meet her eyes. For what it's worth. I am sorry. About Prague. About everything. Geneva didn't forgive him, not yet, maybe not ever. But she understood him better now. They had both been pieces in someone else's game. Kang's wound had been properly treated, his arm now in a sling. The 5 families are in chaos, he reported after ending a call. With my father's connection to Blackfire exposed, they're scrambling to distance themselves. What about your business? Geneva asked. It survives. Changes. A small smile touched his lips. The transformation I always wanted, just not how I imagined it happening. He would continue his father's business, but transform it, as he had always intended. The illegal operations would be dismantled, the legitimate ones expanded. A true break from the past. As the immediate danger passed and their plan unfolded, Geneva found herself standing at a crossroads. The memories had returned, both the ghost's and Elisa's. She remembered her training, her missions, her life before intelligence work. But those memories felt like they belonged to someone else. They were pieces of her past, not directives for her future. 3 days after their operation began, Geneva packed a small bag in her quarters. She was no longer wearing a maid's uniform, but simple civilian clothes, jeans, a t-shirt, a light jacket. Her few possessions fit in a single backpack. She heard footsteps in the hallway and knew who it was before he appeared. Kong stood in the doorway, watching her pack. "You could stay, you know," he said quietly. "There would be a place for you here." "A good place." Geneva paused, considering his offer. There was something between them now, not quite friendship, not quite something more, but a bond forged in shared danger and unlikely trust. "I need to find out who I am now," she replied, her voice soft but firm. "Not the ghost, not the maid. Just me." Kong nodded, understanding without needing more explanation. He reached into his jacket and produced an envelope, holding it out to her. "When you figure it out, this will help you start over. Consider it payment for 1 minute of your time." Geneva took the envelope, knowing without looking that it contained new documents, access to accounts, the resources to build a new life. She smiled, the first real, unguarded smile she'd shown since waking up on that riverbank. It was worth every second. They stood in silence for a moment, the weight of everything that had happened, everything they'd survived, hanging between them. "Will you ever come back?" Kong finally asked. Geneva shouldered her backpack, considering the question. "I don't know," she answered honestly. Then, with a glint in her eye that belonged neither to the ghost nor to the maid, "But if I do, I won't be serving water." As she walked out of the mansion for the last time, Geneva felt something she hadn't experienced in months, maybe years. Freedom. Not just from Blackfire or from her lost memory, but from the definitions others had placed on her. She reached the main gate, pausing to look back at the place where her new life had begun with a simple puzzle no one else could solve. Her phone buzzed with a message from an untraceable number. "They're not all gone. Some escaped the net. Watch your back. M." Geneva stared at the message, feeling the familiar surge of adrenaline. The game wasn't over. The most dangerous players were still out there. And they knew exactly who to fear. And that's how a maid with no memory changed everything with just 1 minute of brilliance. Geneva's story reminds us that who we are isn't defined by our past, but by the choices we make when faced with the truth. If you enjoyed this journey of identity, betrayal, and redemption, I have many more stories waiting for you. Smash that subscribe button right now and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. And tell me, what do you think Geneva will do next? Will she embrace a peaceful new life away from danger, or has the ghost merely found a new mission? After all, some games never truly end, they just change players.